Logo, Chaffey College. Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art Home Edition. The shape of a house outlines the text. Title card, Chaffey College Collective Care Uncovering Poverty. Chaffey College Collective Care Uncovering Identity. Artist Talk, Landyn Pan. November 17, 2021 from 1 to 2:30 p.m. PST. Video, Rebecca Trewick.
Hi everybody, welcome to today's workshop. My name is Rebecca Trewick. I'm the director and curator of the Wignall Museum, and I want to thank you for joining us today. Today's workshop with Landyn Pan is presented as part of Collective Care Uncovering Identity. Collective Care Uncovering Identity is a collaborative series of programs developed by the Center for Culture and Social Justice and the Wignall Museum that bring together artists and community around issues relevant to the LGBT+ community and that look at the intersection of identity and the arts. Today's program is a part of a series of programs that have happened this week. So today we're super honored to have Landyn with us for day 2. And huge thanks to Landyn for spending so much time with our community. Before I introduce you to Landyn, I want to introduce you to Dr. Letty Romo, Director of Student Equity and Engagement and Collaborative Partner in Collective Care. Dr. Romo?
Video, Dr. Letitia Romo.
Hello and welcome everyone. I'm very excited to be here and thankful that you're joining us for this, what's going to be a very fantastic opportunity for us to engage in learning and discussion and engaging as we honor Trans Day of Remembrance. Before we begin this presentation, I wanted to go ahead and read the land acknowledgement. So with respect and honor for the lands where Chaffey College resides and the leaders who came before us, we would like to take a moment to acknowledge the Gabrieleño Tongva peoples, the original stewards of these sacred and unceded homelands. The Tongva people's history, languages, cultural traditions, and legacy continue to shape this region, and we recognize their continuing presence in their homelands. In the spirit of truth and equity, Chaffey College commits to uplifting the voices of Indigenous peoples, building an inclusive and equitable educational environment, and decolonizing the institution. We also encourage members of the Chaffey College community to learn about the land they reside on and their original caretakers and advocate for that culturally responsive action. Thank you.
Text, Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art.
Museum of Contemporary Art aims to present diverse, innovative, contemporary programming that engages contemporary subjects, social issues, and artistic themes. Sometimes presentations may contain provocative or otherwise sensitive or mature content for some viewers.
So today I'm very pleased to introduce Landyn Pan. Landyn is a trans, non-binary photographer and video producer based in Brooklyn, New York. Their artistic mission is to amplify the voices of queer and trans people of color through creating empowering and uplifting media. Their photography work focusing on queer and trans identities, trans bodies, and gender presentation has been seen in Dazed, ID, Logo TV, GLAD, Allure, and many more. As a video producer, they have covered events such as the 2018 election of Ilhan Omar, the 2018 VMAs, the 2019 Lollapalooza Music Festival, the 2019 Made in America Music Festival, and more. So please join me in giving Landyn a warm virtual welcome, and we'll hand over the platform to Landyn. Thank you.
6 video feeds. Many of them clap.
Thank you. Okay, Roman, if you could pull up the presentation, please.
Slides, How to Build Trust and Create Relationships. Lessons Learned Through Photography, presented by Landyn Pan.
I know that some of the names I kind of recognize from yesterday from the artist talk. If you were there yesterday, welcome back. We're gonna be looking at some of the same works that I did, that I showed yesterday, but this is a workshop that's on building trust and relationships through photography with your subjects and models. So I'm a portrait photographer, so this is going to be from a portrait photographer's perspective, but this could apply to documentary filmmaking, narrative film, or even other styles of portraiture and art like painting and illustration, really anything that's collaborative. So and hopefully whatever medium it is that you work with, that you could take away something from this. So I would also say that if there is a project idea that you have, or if you are if there's a project idea that you have, or if you kind of want to brainstorm along with this, feel free to do so. I would totally encourage people to participate and ask questions through the chat. I'll definitely be on the lookout for that. So yeah, I for this presentation, I'm going to be talking more casually about my perspective as a photographer and my philosophy on photography, and that is that you should choose to create art in the community that you are a part of. So this is the reason why pretty much all of my work is on queer and trans stuff. There are a lot of stories out there, and I understand that like not every story is mine to tell. And I also believe that there is no one that can tell your story better than yourself. And I also believe in empowering marginalized individuals to be their own storytellers. So oftentimes photography and documentary film can be really exploitative when work is made from this perspective of an outsider looking in. You can really tell versus when something is more organic or authentic. I think that bias is always going to be there, but I think that there are a lot of ways and steps that we can be a little bit more intentional about it and minimize it. So let's take a look at the next slide.
3 images. In the left image, 8 naked people of different skin tones pose intimately while covered in body paint. In the middle image, an Asian person with short hair and bright red eyeshadow holds up a gray rose. In the right image, a black person holds the neck of a white person and is about to kiss them. They both are wearing see-through lingerie.
This is just a little introduction to my photography. We'll definitely be talking about some of the projects throughout this and kind of what I did in those projects to ensure that I had a connection with all of the subjects beforehand. So let's go to the next slide.
Slide, picking the story. Bullet points. Image, 4 people pose for a studio photograph in dark blue and silvery elegant garments.
Now, let's say you're starting a new art project and you're kind of wondering where to begin. I feel like you really have to intimately know a community in order to capture it well, and the communities that you're in are the ones that you know best. So, to me, it's like, if I'm an Asian American person, how can I trust an Asian American film if the director is white? Or like if it's a photo shoot about trans people and there are barely any trans people on the production staff, like how can I trust that as well? I actually have an example of that. I modeled for this high budget photo shoot. It was about trans people in our stories. There were 4 models. That's that picture on the right, that's from that shoot. So that's not one that I made, but I was in it. And the entire lead production staff, they were all cis, and they had really great intentions. They were queer as well. So it was like a cis gay men, a lot of them, and straight girls. So they had really great intentions. They wanted to learn about trans issues, but it was really evident to me in their planning meetings that I was a part of, and to the other trans models, that they didn't really do enough research and education beforehand. I use they, them pronouns, and I think that like sometimes at the shoot, people did have issues gendering me correctly. And I was kind of warned about that beforehand. I also got asked some questions during the video interview portion where I felt like they made some assumptions about trans people, like that maybe that trans people have issues with themselves rather than us having issues with society being transphobic. So it just showed to me that they didn't really do enough research. Out of the 30 staff, they had a lot of makeup and hair people and video staff and whatnot on the shoot. They probably had about 30 people, and only 2 of them were trans, and they were definitely the people that I felt the most comfortable around. So, kind of reflecting on, that's sort of an example of like, okay, this is what happens when you aren't prepared to engage with a community that you don't know super well. What I think that they needed to do was that they probably should have hired a trans consultant or an educator to run a trans 101 training for all their staff beforehand, so that way they weren't asking us. It's like I came into the project mentally prepared for this to happen, and I did have the energy to sort of educate people that day, but at the end of it all, it's like I was paid to be a model, not an educator. And I know that like this situation, it would have made a lot of other trans people pretty uncomfortable. So yeah, first was like educating themselves beforehand. Second was that I wish that they had hired more trans producers and crew for the photo shoot. I wish that they had hired at least a trans lead person for the video crew, because everyone there was cis and straight. And although they handled things very respectfully and from a well-intentioned place, I could, they didn't really fully understand trans experience, and a lot of stuff that I was saying, it was like their first time hearing about it. So after the photo shoot, and more specifically the video shoot came out, my friend, who was the other model, kind of complained that they only included surface level things about that they had said in the video about their trans identity in the video. And my response to that is because as a video editor, you're only going to choose to edit in what you can understand. So it's like if the video editor didn't have a very broad understanding of trans experience, and some of the things were too complex that they couldn't understand it, then they're not gonna edit those things into the video. And so as a result, the final product just wasn't as complex or unique, and it definitely felt more like a trans 101. So when I start the process of sort of thinking over what type of projects that I want to work on first, I just start to list out sort of what are the communities and identities, and however big or small, that I'm a part of that mean a lot to me. So this could be location based. It could be about like my hometown, current city, my neighborhood, the school that I went to or go to. Could be about gender, sexuality, race, ethnicity, and it could also be things like hobbies and sports. Like maybe you're part of a community garden and you want to make a film about that, or you're a skateboarder, and a lot of different things. The stuff with sports is so interesting because I was also in a shoot where it was surfing related, and the videographer for this was a surfer. And so because he's a surfer, he knows how to anticipate when things are going to happen. Like he can tell, okay, that's a surfable wave, so I'm going to get my camera ready because maybe someone's going to catch it. And we were totally joking around saying like, okay, well, it's a good thing that he's a surfer too, because if he wasn't, maybe he'd be telling us to wax the surfboard like on the back of it rather than the front, or he'd like position us wrong or something like that. So it's like identity, like, broad, like big identity stuff aside, like even with things like sports, it's like when you do the activity, like how to shoot it better because you know what to anticipate and all of that. So yeah, if anybody has anything else to add to this list, feel free to put it in the chat. So in general, I just think, what kind of story do I want to tell? If we're talking about future projects right now, for me, that would be, I've been thinking about it, and it's like I've made lots of stuff on trans and gender related things. Now I'm thinking like, okay, well, my father is an immigrant. He's lived abroad in China my whole life, and we have a lot of difficulty communicating because of language barrier. And I know that this is something that a lot of people would probably relate to. So this story is something that's in my lane that I can tell because it's very personal to me. It's my family, it's my culture. Another one that I was thinking about recently has been maybe a short film about bisexual expansion. This is something I'm writing right now. And the setting that it takes place in is within boxing. I'm an athlete, I'm a personal trainer, I take boxing classes. So it just feels very natural and fitting. Like I know like the look and feel of that environment, and I can capture that authentically. So, things like a project that I haven't ever touched on is something that's related to Trans Day of Remembrance. I am a trans person, I am part of the community, but I've just never felt like that was my lane to make art about, since anti-trans violence usually affects Black and brown trans women and femmes, and me as this cis assumed trans masculine person, in most spaces people don't read me as trans, so in most spaces I feel very safe. So even though I am in the trans community, I felt like doing a project about that, it just wasn't really in my lane to do. And I see that somebody put disability and mental health on the list. That absolutely is something that should be on there too. Okay. So I think overall, the project that you're doing, it doesn't have to exactly be about you, it could be something that's broader within your community, but you should definitely be involved like in that community, whatever it is, as much as you can. And I'll explain a little bit more of that later. But overall, I think it's super important that that connection with a community that you're a part of is already there, because you can't really establish proper trust with someone no matter how good your intentions are. You're going to get uncomfortable models. You're going to get people who may not open up to you all the way. You're not going to get the most authentic story. And I also think that it's worth evaluating what type of gaze you bring into the project as an artist when capturing people of a specific community. There's always going to be bias, but the question is, what can we really do to minimize it? Next slide.
Slide, role of the artist. Bullet points.
So let's say you've decided on a topic that you want to create work about. Whatever it is, I think it's important to understand your role as an artist. Photography has the potential to be a really predatory space. I've had a lot of femme friends tell me that, like, you know, someone offers to shoot them, but really it's just flirting. Or I've heard people encounter sexual harassment by photographers on photo shoots. So I try to be very aware that people might have had that sort of experience before in the way that I interact with them. So one thing that I think as an artist that you should do is be really clear about the purpose of your project and make the expectations clear. Both photography and documentary filmmaking can be exploitative spaces where, you know, the artist profits off of the images and stories of others. Stories can be glorified, they can be oversimplified or sensationalized if you're not careful, and it could even maybe perpetuate some stereotypes. So definitely come to the subject or the community prepared and educated, you know, either with your personal experience or connection, and lots of research as well. So the example would have been that photo shoot that I had been in prior. That photo shoot that I had been in prior, I would say that that definitely was a little bit sensationalized because they didn't come with enough education beforehand. So, and then be respectful to the subjects and the community at all times. I feel like that's really obvious, but I've just seen so many artists. I've seen so many artists just not really, I guess, do that step. It's so simple, but I think that sometimes there have been shoots where people are in where it's like, yeah, the interaction with the photographer has been very short. They ask you to come on, they take your picture, you get some nice free pictures, but that's about it. Really, it's like this person maybe did it to make, you know, their own photo book, and they're not really showing care to the people that they're interacting with. Okay, next slide.
Slide, role of the artist. New bullet points.
Capture the subject and community as authentically as possible. The best work is collaborative. So make sure that you get the subject's input and that they're part of the process. Even if you're part of a specific community, everyone is different. So just knowing that and not making assumptions when you come into that. For example, just because I'm trans, that doesn't mean that I understand the experience of every trans person. And so I'm not going to go in there assuming that they're going to have the same story as me. So coming in there open-minded, there's that trust and connection already because, you know, we're both blank, but still assumptions can lead to a lot of bias. So, and that can make the models uncomfortable and not show up their best. So just kind of leaving those things at the door. Next slide.
3 images. In the left image, a black person with a short pink mohawk holds an electric guitar and wears black leather and a hand harness with chains. In the middle image, a white person with face paint under their eyes wears football pants and shoulder pads and holds a football in hand. In the right image, an Asian person in a blue jacket pushes their hair back. They have fluffy things in different colors on their chest.
So some examples that I'll talk about. I have this series that I did earlier last year, and it's the it's the Mask Heartthrob series, which is a caricature of masculinity, a queerified version of all of the iconic masculine heartthrob archetypes that we see on TV and movies that we had a crush on or that we wanted to be. So I came up with this project because I was reflecting on my own masculinity. one day. I feel like as a trans masculine person, there's a lot of pressure to not perpetuate the same harm as cis men. And because of that, I think that I've seen between my peers and I that we will avoid certain things because we feel like it's masculine, and sometimes, we see that as conflated with toxicity, even though masculinity isn't inherently toxic. So I wanted to have this project that really celebrated masculinity in like a fun, playful way. So when I did the casting for this project, I wanted to find a broad range of voices in queer masculinity. I didn't want it to just be trans masculine people because I wanted to have the project sort of speak to the fact that masculinity doesn't just belong to men. It doesn't belong to cis men. It doesn't belong to trans guys. It can belong to androgynous people, people who use she, her, or they, them, and people of all sorts of identities. So I found a lot of different people. I did a casting call. A lot of different people hit me up, and I had one-on-one conversations with each of them about sort of their relationships with masculinity and how they saw themselves fitting or not fitting into that role. I wanted to really make sure that I collaborated with them to make sure that they were portrayed how they wanted to be. I worked with them on picking the character that they'd be shot in. So for example, like I would list out sort of like the things that I would see in movies and TV a lot. So on the left there is like the rock star, in this case, a punk rocker. In the middle, there's the jock. We see that all the time in like pretty much like every teen movie. On the right is the K-pop star. Can we go to the next slide?
3 images. On the left, a vampire in a black torso harness. In the middle, a prince with gold shoulder jewelry. On the right, a skater with a sports bra and midriff.
On the left here, vampire. In the middle, the fairy tale prince, and then on the right, the skater. So I would list out a bunch of different things that I saw in movies, longer than the list of people that I actually had as models, and I would brainstorm and work with these people on what fit them the best. So if this wasn't a collaborative process, I could have just looked at the person's picture and be like, okay, well, you're cute, and assign them characters and then never talk to them. But I wanted it to be collaborative. So, we had ongoing discussions, and everybody here also worked individually with our stylist to make sure that the clothes that they had made them comfortable. So they came into the project knowing what it was, like that it was going to be everyone playing into this masculine character, playing that masculine side of them. But I wanted to still let them have control over like what that looked like and what that meant, and the clothing, so that they felt real and they felt good about it being published.
Slide, 3 images. In all 3, naked people who are transpose in body paint.
My other example on the next slide is my series Trans and Gender Nonconforming Naked Paint Party. This was a project. I shot 50 trans people over 6 or so photo shoots. Each group had 5 to 15 people in it. The shoots were 4 to 6 hours long. And, in order to establish trust, we would always start out with a group discussion about bodies, body image, dysphoria, really anything that the participants wanted to talk about. So that way they could establish trust with each other. And this was also our time to talk about consent and set ground rules. So that would always be the first hour of the photo shoot. The next hour or two was the actual painting. Everyone strips. I myself also strip, so that way I get on the same level as everyone else and lessen that power dynamic, just because as the photographer or the creator of a project, there's always going to be this inherent power dynamic, or that's a lot of times assumed. And I work really hard to sort of roll that back a little bit and make it feel really collaborative. Like, this is my project, but this is yours as well. So that was one thing that I would do to make people comfortable in the beginning. And even before that, I would have a sign-up form for participants that had them answer a lot of questions first I had a long statement on this form about the origin story of my project, what it meant to me personally as a trans person, what my intentions were with this, and also stated that this project was not sexual. So this was probably like a 1.5-page Word document worth of words. I was very vulnerable with the models or the people who are interested in the photo shoot about my story. So in turn, they would feel safer being vulnerable with me. And the questions included, what is your relationship with your body as a trans or non-binary person? Examples, I feel dysphoric because of a body part. I feel more dysphoric because of hormones than before. I've suffered from an eating disorder or self-harm because of dysphoria. I feel stigmatized for not being trans enough. So these are just examples that I put to kind of encourage, like, you could really talk about anything here. Another question I had, what's your opinion on trans representation currently? Name the good and bad and what you wish to see. What makes you feel affirmed and validated in your body? How do you cope / what do you do to heal from the ongoing traumas you face as a trans and or non-binary person whose body is constantly stigmatized? And then the last question was, why do you want to be a part of this photo shoot and what are your expectations, if any? And these questions are okay for me to ask because I'm trans myself. I feel like that kind of has an automatic trust there. And especially after, like, basically I answer all of these questions like in my artist statement of why I'm doing this project. This photo shoot, we can go to the next slide.
Image. 4 naked people in body paint. They grab each other's legs. Mainly the area of their torsos and thighs is visible.
So you could just see some of the images that came up from this. This photo shoot would look very, very different if I wanted to just photograph naked trans people. Like if I was just like, all right, like everyone has like a 15-second time slot. You're just going to show up and I'm just going to photograph you. I feel like that would create a very different type of image. We go to the next slide.
2 images. In the left, a person smiles brightly as multiple hands fan out around their face and form a kind of body-painted mane. In the right, a group of people laugh and pose. One of them bends over and shows their rear end.
And in this series, I, didn't hold any expectations for how people were going to act or feel. So a lot of the pictures are very joyous, and it's because, over the several hours that all the participants spend together, we really get to let go and relax over time and really, like, I guess, get to know each other in this space. And so sometimes joy was very natural in this space. We go to the next slide.
3 images. On the left, the words "fuck your body" painted on somebody's rear end. In the middle, a person holds up their arm in a strong man pose. On the right, a person sits on a stool and looks at us.
But sometimes it wasn't. A lot of people came into this photo shoot and on their form, they told me that they were, or in the discussion, told everybody that they were actually really terrified to do this, but that they felt like it would be, I guess, challenging and something that would give them perspective. They wanted, to challenge themselves to be a part of an affirming experience, but being naked in front of other people was scary for them. And so sometimes portraits would show up more reserved, like this person on the right. They, sometimes people would like dance and be really extra and all this stuff. But, for example, this person on the right in the blue and, many other participants, they were a little bit more reserved. And, I don't push them to pose in any sort of way. Definitely while people are getting their pictures taken, all of their new friends at the shoot are, they're hyping each other up and all this stuff. But I wanted to make sure that no matter what, that they get to be captured the way that they're feeling in the moment, whether that's good or, whether, basically they don't have to act what they like. If it doesn't feel natural to them, they don't have to do it. Okay, so we can go to the next slide.
Slide. Starting the relationship. Bullet points.
So starting the relationship with the subjects in your photos starts with reaching out. So again, being clear about your project and intentions and timeline. This is going to come off as really professional. I feel like I get a lot of DMs where like sometimes people are like, oh, let's collab. And it's just one sentence. And it's just like, I have no context for what any of this means or what you want from me. Like, and like people have said, sometimes, especially my femme friends, it's like, well, if some random guy is like, hey, like, let's shoot sometime, like they're probably flirting and they don't really care about the photography that much. So that's something that I keep in mind when I reach out to other people, is that like I want to minimize the anxiety by letting them know exactly, like, as many details as I have at the moment. Yeah, so going back to like, when I get DM from other people, it's like, yeah, sometimes I'll get DMs from people where they're just saying let's collab. Other times I get really detailed, like, project statements and timelines from people, and those are the only people I reply to, basically. Second thing when reaching out is definitely consider compensation. If it's a personal project and it's low key and it's local, like, if I'm a trans person, it's like, oh, I want to do some trans portraits of whatever. A lot of times people don't mind doing it for fun, especially if they believe in the vision. If it's something commercial, I think that people should absolutely advocate on behalf of the models for fair compensation. And then if the project is something that you think that you're going to make money off of later, I would definitely consider back compensation. So for example, giving the model a percentage of the money that you make off of their photos, or donating it to a cause that you choose with them or something like that. I've definitely done photo shoots before where the artist is selling prints, like where they shoot me and they're selling prints, but like, the 100% of the proceeds go to a Black trans organization. Then to me, it's like, all right, yeah, that's fine. I'm cool with doing that for free. If that's what you're doing and I'm getting like a cool picture out of it. So just kind of be aware of that, and also take into consideration, I guess, the dynamics in your compensation. So for example, if I'm a trans mask person, one thing that I ran into as an issue, not really an issue, but a limitation for me when I did the naked paint party, was that a lot of the people coming into the projects were also transmasculine or AFAB, because I felt like it was because the project was by me. They felt like they related to me and my words because they are also assigned female at birth. And so not as many trans femmes showed up to the shoot. So it's like, if I were to want to work with a trans femme person as in more of a collaborative dynamic, I would definitely want to compensate that person really well to be part of this project, part of like the planning and the production. I always encourage that people really get to know their subjects. This seems really obvious, but it definitely is not something that every photographer or documentary filmmaker does. So, do at least like a 30-minute coffee before and or after. Like, you don't always have to be talking specifically about the project, but I think you should just get to know the person. And this will really help you assess each other's vibe and know whether or not you're even a good match as collaborators. Definitely, if you have the time, chat with them while they're shooting and find ways to connect and relate. It doesn't, again, have to be, whatever the photo subject is, but maybe, you find out, oh, we both love traveling, or we've both been to this place in the past, or something like that. And get involved in the community that you're photographing for a period of time before the art project starts, and ask for feedback.
2 images. On the left, a Black person holds the neck of a white person as they are about to kiss. They both wear see-through lingerie. On the right, a person grabs hold of the leg of another person in a dress in front of them.
Next slide. So in terms of like getting to know people, that's just something that's really important in order to get people comfortable. That could take a little time, or that could take a lot of time. It really depends on like who you are as an artist. I know some people are shyer than others. For me, if I can afford to take the time with photo shoots, I will take the time. For this series, this is a trans couple series that I did. I got people in at 2-hour blocks. That is really a luxury. Because sometimes if you're in a commercial photo shoot, maybe you really do just have 15 minutes with people, and that sucks. But there's always going to be downtime where I really try to squeeze in conversations with the models that I have. So with these couples, they were in 2-hour blocks. I would chat with each couple for the 30 to 60 minutes that it would take them to get makeup done or get dressed. I just sat there like we were friends. Like, we would talk about, first, usually as an icebreaker, I would ask, kind of like, how did you meet? And then we would just have casual conversations about whatever, whether that was, traveling, or like, events that were going on in the city. I don't know. Sometimes people would talk to me about surgeries, or like, basically it's like I let them lead the conversation. I would ask questions with curiosity, but I let them lead the conversation into whether or not they wanted to be more casual or more deep. But yeah, we just talked as friends, and I'm still connected with a lot of these folks. Let's go to the next slide.
3 images. In each, a trans couple poses against the backdrop of lush and vividly colored flowers.
Just to show more photos from this series. So, really talking to them, and as a friend, I feel like gets them really comfortable in front of the camera. They're couples as well, so it's like they're already with somebody that they know, so they are already a little more comfortable to begin with. But it's definitely nice to let people have like a friend or two like at the shoots to help them be more comfortable if it is a solo shoot. So let's go to the next slide. Next slide, please.
3 images. Another 3 images. Portraits of individuals in quirky and flamboyant garb with makeup.
Thank you. I mentioned earlier to get more into the community if you can of whoever you're shooting. So for example, I am queer and trans. Well, here, let me backtrack a little bit. I would say, yeah, let me backtrack a little bit. I'm going to explain this series real quick. So this is a series that I did on Brooklyn drag and burlesque performers, all who were queer and non-binary or trans. The concept for this was that I really kind of wanted to show like their campiness and portray it in a series that I didn't really name anything besides like queer serial killer series. Basically, everyone portrays like a type of murderer, and I would talk to them about like what type of characters they would play on stage, and what type of persona they had, and we would choose it together. So for example, this person on the left is a mafia lord. The person in the middle is doing a satanic ritual. The person on the right, this is kind of a I guess like a sexier version of like a chainsaw serial killer. Let's go back to the previous slide. Person on the left here is like some sort of Dexter like TV show-esque, like take your body apart type of murderer. The person in the middle, they actually already had an act where they were a I guess housewife who ends up killing her husband. So I'm like, okay, that's funny, like that works for this. The person on the right is an arsonist. So I kind of did this series to play on the fact that, a lot of villains in older movies and TV shows, especially kid shows, they're queer coded. So we did the series together. I am queer and trans, so capturing queer and trans performers, that's not out of my range. I felt like me and most of these participants, we had a lot of automatic trust just because I watched the performances and I'm able to see their gender and understand their style of performance and relate to it, maybe more so than other people. However, I'm not a performer. I would go to these shows often and I wanted to be more than just a voyeur. Like I really wanted to understand like, yeah, what even is their lifestyle and their process like to get ready for stage and stuff like that. So I'm not a performer, but I did seek out ways to get involved in the show. So I would sell tickets at the door. I would like sell raffles or like be like stage managing, which really just meant like sweeping the stage before the next act. So that way I could be part of the show. I would also like be in my underwear. So I would like match the vibe and stuff. But I wanted to do this to go beyond a transactional relationship of like, okay, I'll take photos for you. I'm going to get art out of it. And then you're going to get photos out of this for your posters. There are a lot of photographers in Brooklyn who do that for them. And I just wanted to have relationships with everybody in a deeper way. So being involved in these shows, it was really fun because, I would get to go there early. I would be backstage. There was this mutual feeling like I'm part of it and I'm there to support them in whatever ways that they need while they're performing. So this was really like a genuine interest of mine in the scene, and it really helped to build mutual comfort. So let's see. Yeah, I guess that's just kind of my example of like there are ways that you can get to know the people that you want to get to know better. a lot of these folks, I would probably have seen them perform like 5 or 6 times before we shot them. So it's not like we even needed to ask that much, like, oh, like, oh, you know, what type of character are you? It's like, no, I've seen it and I can make my own suggestions based off of that. And then I would say, you know, someone who would be even better than me at capturing them would be another performer. There are performer photographers out there who do both. I feel like they would definitely have a different perspective because it's like they really have the internal perspective of how to get ready and what it takes to get on stage and you know, all of the self-talk and pep talks that you have to do for yourself. So that is somebody that I would say would be even better at capturing a series like this. Okay, next question. Sorry, next slide. I see a question or two in here maybe, and I'll address it at the end. Another slide.
Slide, best practices. Bullet points.
So we're almost done with this part, but just to kind of round out some best practices during the project, take some time to chat, you know, with the model during their day. Take some time to chat with the model like before or during, you know, about their day, about anything. Try to make the time for it, especially if it's your first time meeting, like you didn't get to do a call or a coffee beforehand. Allow them to bring a friend to make them feel more comfortable. And then one thing, I actually do this too as a fitness trainer, is to meet them at their physical level. So that way your eye line is always matched. So for example, if they're sitting, you're sitting. If they're standing, you're standing. If they're on the ground, you're on the ground. At least when you're talking to them. If you're shooting and you need to get different angles, it's a different story. But when you're having a conversation, like try to match their eye line. I feel like that really shows that you respect them and that you're in a collaboration with them rather than, you know, if they were sitting and you were higher up, that creates a little bit more of like a dynamic where it's like you're in charge. So I always try to match that and be intentional of that. That is something that's, I think, subconscious. And then as I'm taking the photos, I usually like to show people the pictures as we go along, you know, get a sense of what they like and what they don't like, and make sure that they're comfortable with how you are depicting them. Next slide.
Slide, new bullet points.
After the photo shoot, if a model is uncomfortable with a photo that you have posted, offer to take it down. This has happened to me before, especially with the Naked Paint Party series, just because it is so sensitive because it's like people are naked online. Sometimes, well, there was one instance where somebody asked me to take down a photo because she wanted it edited in a certain way. And I didn't really understand what she was talking about, but you know, then I would take a step back and just remind myself that like whatever she's seeing is what she's seeing, and this is a picture of her, so you need to just listen and take it down. So yeah, if you get asked to take something down, do it. I've definitely had I've heard of people who don't, and I think that's ridiculous. Even though it's like I take release forms to just legally protect me. I have the legal right to post these photos, like I own them. The person that is in the photos doesn't own them, but I think that it is morally wrong to use the person's image against their will. So if somebody asks you to take it down, just do it. Even if, you know, it's a hit to your portfolio or whatever. At the end of the day, you know, it's someone else's image, and how would you feel too if you had a horrible picture, or if you thought that this horrible picture of you existed out there without your consent? So depending on the sensitivity of the subject, ask the models to double check and approve their own quotes for publication. I know that I just feel like in interviews with, you know, me and my friends, when we get interviewed for publications, either as artists or like, you know, if at an event or something like that, the journalists always promise that they'll like let us check the quote before it's published, and they never do. So I definitely make sure that like that the models do get to see what's being published about them, or that, you know, they are approving everything within this page is okay, and maybe the publication uses a part of it. I just make sure that like nothing, basically that like no one is publishing something that they didn't say. And then lastly, you know, if you wanted to, you could have a show or an event that's in person to connect the people that are in your artworks. If, you know, you didn't have a group photo shoot like Naked Paint Party, like the trans couple one, all of them did it separately. That one I didn't have an event for. I actually did have events for Naked Paint Party where people could go to and stuff, but for the online publications, when that gets published, I kind of just use that to connect people, like, hey, like just making sure like this other model of mine who played this person in the shoot, like they really said something that I felt like you would resonate with. So I kind of try to go out of my way to connect people that I think would get along in these photo shoots. Because at the end of the day, you know, art is about connection and relation. So that's it for my presentation. In general,
Presentation closes. Video feeds.
take a genuine interest in your subjects. I feel like if you don't have a genuine interest in your subjects, that is just not the project for you to do. There's probably something out there that you maybe connect better with. Do your research, know your lane and what's not your lane, collaborate, treat your subjects like people, and be patient and take the time to learn and to create. Creating art is about the process just as much as it is about the journey. So if anybody has any questions, I'll take them.
I have a question. Landon, thank you for sharing that. I think one of the things that really stuck out to me is that even though you're talking about this in an artist lens, right, as a photographer lens, I think there's so much that you've said that is transferable to us who work at a college, in a college, right, who are working with students and engaging and trying to build trust, right? How are we, one of the things I heard through your words is this number one, intent versus impact. And then number two is really centering the student and their experience, right? Or the subject and their experience. Yeah. So I just wanted to say thank you, because I felt like there's so much transferable knowledge that you shared with us right now.
Absolutely. I usually think of myself as like, not this like, oh, like I'm the ultimate creator of this like project, like take your ego out of it sort of thing. And it's just like, I want to share stories about blank because this is important to me. So, you know, that's how I chose sort of the subject for that so not trans, I always say that, the Mask Heartthrob series. Like I'll like that's a topic that I wanted to do, but ultimately it's like I'm helping other people tell their stories. That's the way that I view it. And then when you view it like that, I feel like sort of the collaboration piece is a lot more natural.
I appreciate what Letty just shared, because I had the exact same thought. You know, I think not only as folks who work with students, but I was thinking about the work that Roman, Andy, and I do, working with artists, artist communities, curators, etc. You know, we always have to ask ourselves, are we the right person to try to organize this story or tell this story? And when we're not, we have to be willing to say, okay, we need to find the right person. So I think it's interesting, you know, how, like Letty said, like how this advice is really important about working with all kinds of people, and really truly anytime collaboration is happening, which, you know, that's a relationship that should be happening with most of the work that any of us might be doing, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's a question in here that you put down that is, what advice do you have for creatives who are commissioned or hired for a project where they don't have any personal connection? How can they put your advice into practice in the commercial world? And this is a really good question, because I have seen I guess, there are a lot of discussions about this actually among photographers. And I think the answer is that, like, if you feel like it is not in your lane to tell the story that you're being hired to do, that you recommend people who are. So for example, like if somebody asked me to, I mean, I don't really think that this would happen, hopefully, but I guess it does all the time. It's like if somebody were to ask me to shoot a project, you know, like for Black History Month, I feel like I would probably be like, I don't think that this is my lane to do. You know, here are 3 Black photographers that I really admire who could do this job better. So I think doing something like that is really important, because I mean, there are a lot of photographers out there who are white and cis and straight, especially guys, and they take up a lot of projects when they could be sharing those with people. I think that the conversations that I've had is with other queer photographers who kind of complain about, like, companies will do queer editorials, or they'll do like, okay, like gender neutral fashion, and you know, they really want to have this like queer aesthetic. You know, they hire like models with buzz cuts and stuff like that, and they have like a straight man shoot it, and it's like they definitely should have had a queer person shoot that instead. There's plenty of queer photographers out there who can do that job. So that would be
That's
my
interesting too, because it's like in the film industry. I mean, I think every industry, right? There's a reckoning happening, like, but you hear it in the film industry and TV, especially, like, you know, who are the actors who are hired for what roles, right? And so
yeah.
it's like that ethical consideration is interesting.
Yeah, so that is definitely something I believe in, is like it's like it's like even though I believe I'm a really great photographer, like I'm not the photographer for every job.
Landon, do you find, are you naturally an outgoing kind of person in terms of, I think when I studied photography, a problem that I always had was as a personality, going up to people and engaging them and trying to connect, to even get that first step going of shooting a photography kind of project. Like, do you is it something you've had to work at in order to be at all comfortable with going up to strangers, with engaging people, with like opening yourself up, just even on that basic level of just having to like talk to people and ask them, like, how do you start the ask, and how do you like
Yeah,
build up the, yeah.
I'm definitely shy at first, but not I'm shy initially, so it's like I've never actually approached anybody um in person like that. Usually I'll initiate contact with somebody via usually Instagram. So maybe it's like I find them through a casting call, or it's like I know who they are in the community, or they, you know, or maybe we're mutuals on Instagram or something like that. And I've seen them around before, and it's like, oh, like I feel like you would be a really cool person to get to know. I initiated through Instagram just because I feel like that's like safer for me. It doesn't feel as awkward. So yeah, it's Instagram first, and then I know for me that my strongest suit is one-on-one interaction. So that's why like I try to have enough, a little bit of, at least a little bit of one-on-one conversation with people beforehand, so that way maybe when I do see them in a group setting, it feels like, all right, like we already have a relationship started. It's not like, you know, I'm like this brand new person like thrown in the middle of a party or something like that. So, but that's a great question. I think that there's many ways to do it. And a lot of photographers are shy. So yeah, I think it's totally cool to reach out to people via the internet first, and then, you know, connect with them however you are comfortable.
Thank you. Yeah, that makes sense, and it ties back into the idea of, you know, starting in your own community. I guess that awkwardness isn't as awkward
Yeah.
if it's part of a community that you feel comfortable with.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? I would also say that whenever there's a new project, I would start with like your friends and sort of people that you already know first. That way, like you both have mutual comfort with them. Like, you know, it's like on your end, if you're the artist and you mess up, but it's your friend, you know, nobody really cares. There's not really that pressure there. And then it's like, all right, maybe once you have a couple products from that, and you post about it. This example really works, I think, with my uh, queer serial killers series. It's like I met that first person online. I didn't know them at all. You know, having that one-on-one like one-on-one interaction was really good. But we were mutuals first, I guess. So it felt like I wasn't just totally reaching out to a stranger. It was like, oh, like they follow me because they see my work and they like it. So, you know, they'd probably be down. So I guess they weren't a friend, but it was like after I met them, they introduced me to a lot of other people, you know, and it's like once you shoot two people. So I shot their partner second. So that was really nice because it's like, oh, well, I met your partner, you know, we could talk about that as a point of relation. And then after that, it's like, well, I have two photos from this series now. Now that I have two photos, it's like other performers that see it, even if we're not really friends, they see it and they want to be part of it. And I would say that like going to the shows too helped with that interaction, because it's like the more you see people, you know, if I see this person at this same show every Wednesday, but they're doing a different act, it's like we start to familiarize ourselves with each other, and having a role there, like then it's like, okay, well, I'm the person that sells tickets, so it's like you have to talk to me for some reason. So that gives me sort of, I guess, like a way to communicate with people, because it's like, well, I have a job here, so I have to talk to you. I think that's a good sort of technique too. Okay, so I have another question here. For engaging within the community that you make photo projects with, how long do you continue to engage after the project? How do you manage the transition into other interests and projects? So I feel like I definitely communicate with them through when the project is published, at the very least. And then after that, I think it depends on like how natural or not your relationship is. Um, right? Like some people we're gonna get along with more than others. So if if our discussions felt really natural, I'll definitely check in with them, and see how they're doing. But if not, then it's just kind of like, thank you, so much for being a part of this project and stuff like that. And then we may not talk to each other.
Okay, I know that we're coming up to the end of the session. I don't know if there's one last question or whatnot, but I wanted to first thank everyone for joining us today. And I also want to give a very special thank you to Landyn. I'm totally gonna, Landyn and I have worked together for a long time, and I am so happy that they were able to join us today and really offer such amazing insight of not only as an artist, but also about how we can show up and be more intentional with how we interact with our peers or our colleagues or our students in this case. And so, from your surfboard example where you're talking about, like if it wasn't for someone telling you what side to to wax or to shine on your surfboard, you wouldn't have known, and how important that is that we honor each other and the perspectives that we give. But then also really this sense of showing care, right? Like being able to be present for the people that we're working with and we're connecting with. And so, Landyn, I thank you for being here with us. So we learned a lot yesterday and today, and I appreciate you, and I appreciate you being here.
Thank you. Oh yeah, I got one last thing I guess to answer. Sia C Krob, who asked that question just now. I'll say also that like some of the people that I've met in these photo shoots, like I have built really real friendships with, like two of the people that are burlesque performers. They're getting married to each other, and I'm invited to their wedding next year. So that's like a 30-person guest list. So it's like I have met some really incredible people and built really incredible friendships through my photography work. But yeah, that's it. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you, Landyn, and follow Landyn on Instagram. Do you have other places that on social media that people can continue to follow your work?
It's just Instagram right now. So it's at Landyn Pan, LandynPan. Thank you.
All right.
Landyn.
Thank you. All right, y'all. Have a good night, everyone.
Take care.
Logo, Chaffey College. Wignall Museum of Contemporary Art Home Edition. The shape of a house outlines the text.